Have you ever looked at the ceiling at 3 a.m., phone in your hand, scrolling through old photos of her, wondering why the hell it still hurts? You tell yourself you're strong, but deep down, you know you've been carrying dead weight for months, maybe years. You've replayed the breakup 100 times in your head, asking yourself where you went wrong, why she walked away, why it feels like your chest is being crushed, even when you're supposed to be moving on. Let me ask you something. How many more nights are you going to waste bleeding over someone who already turned the page without you? How much longer are you going to torture yourself with what-if fantasies when the truth is staring you in the face? It's hard to let go. I get it. But if you don't, you will never be free. And I'm telling you this with every ounce of truth in me. Letting go is the only way forward. You either face this now, or you will carry chains for the rest of your life. Before I break this down into the raw, undeniable truths, I want you to do something. Comment, "I let go," right now. Because by typing that, you're not just saying it to me, you're saying it to yourself. You're declaring that you refuse to keep living like a prisoner of someone who left you behind. Number 1, letting go opens the door. Letting go opens the door not just to healing, but to absolute transformation. Yet most men will spend months, sometimes years, glued to a closed chapter, desperately trying to rewrite the past, instead of stepping into their future. You wake up every morning hoping the pain will fade, but instead it deepens, because you refuse to accept the simple, brutal truth. She's not coming back the way you imagine, and even if she does, she won't return with the love, respect, or loyalty you once hoped for. Letting go isn't giving up. It's stopping the self-destruction. It's the quiet act of courage that shifts your entire identity. It's the day you choose your peace over her chaos. Because what are you really holding on to? A fantasy. A memory of who she was at her best, filtered through your loneliness and need. You're not clinging to her. You're clinging to the version of you that existed when you still believed she was yours. That man is gone. And every moment you delay this realization, you suffer. She's already moving on, whether with another man, new friends, a fresh environment. She's not refreshing your profile. She's not wondering if you've eaten. She's not rewinding the moments when she said, "I love you." She said it then because it felt real then. But feelings aren't vows, and most people, especially in this modern hyper-entitled dating market, don't build their choices around commitment anymore. They build around convenience. Letting go opens the door to a life that no longer centers on being someone's second choice. It opens the path to clarity. Because when you release her, you create space. And when you have space, you have breath, you have time, you have thought, you have distance. And that's when you realize she wasn't a soulmate. She was a mirror, reflecting all the parts of yourself you ignored. She was a test, and now that it's over, you're free to rebuild. Not for revenge, not to impress her, not to win the breakup, but to reclaim the you that existed before you bent your standards for her validation. You're not heartbroken because she left. You're heartbroken because you gave too much. You ignored red flags. You tolerated passive-aggressive comments. You smiled when she belittled you. You swallowed your truth to keep the peace. And now you're here, asking yourself what went wrong. What went wrong is that you lost yourself trying to keep someone who didn't even know how to stay. Letting go is not passive. It's an aggressive act of reclaiming your time, your energy, your goals, your direction. The Stoics taught that death isn't the end. Stagnation is. And when you remain emotionally chained to someone who's already mentally moved on, you're a prisoner in your own life. Letting go is walking out of your own cell. It's saying, I choose me. Not in a narcissistic way, not in an Instagram inspirational quotes way, but in a raw, masculine, grounded way that says, I will no longer pour into what drains me. You want to know how to start? Start with your routine. Write it down. Your sleep, your diet, your exercise, your income, your circle of friends, your screen time. Audit everything that steals energy and doesn't return value. Then replace every old habit that was about her. Texting her, checking her page, driving past her apartment, with something that feeds you. Join a gym, learn a skill, travel somewhere she never wanted to go, build something she never supported. Because that's the door you're opening, a life where you're no longer performing for her attention, but evolving for your future. Letting go is terrifying at first, because it feels like death. But what dies isn't love. What dies is the illusion. And illusions are meant to die. Truth survives. You think you're losing something, but you're not. You're shedding. And what's left after the shedding? Power, direction, peace. That's the door. Walk through it. Because the man who lets go owns himself, and the man who owns himself owns his life. And if that truth resonates even a little, then you owe it to yourself to go deeper. That's exactly why I put together the Stoic Relationship Blueprint. It's not just an ebook, it's a full mental reset. It answers the questions you've been drowning in. Why do I keep choosing women who hurt me? Why can't I let go, even when I know she's no good for me? How do I stop repeating the same emotional cycles? And most importantly, how do I rebuild my life in a way that no one can ever break again? This book is yours for life. Once you get it, you'll always have access to this knowledge, these tools, these principles. Every time life throws you back into chaos, you'll have a blueprint to find your center again. The link is in the comments. Own the book, own your peace, and never lose yourself. Again. Number 2. Love doesn't excuse disrespect. Love doesn't excuse disrespect. And the moment you understand that, truly understand it, is the moment you stop being emotionally manipulated by women who weaponize affection to excuse abuse. We've been fed a lie our whole lives. If you love her enough, she'll change. If you love her through her worst, she'll reward you with her best. If you just hold on long enough, she'll come back to her senses and see your worth. But what happens when your patience becomes your prison? When your loyalty becomes your leash? What happens is what you're feeling right now. Depleted, anxious, confused, stuck between what you feel and what she does. She says she loves you, but disappears for days. She says you're her person, but flirts with men on Instagram. She says she's just figuring herself out, but expects you to wait, suffer, and accept it. And the more you stay, the more she resents you. Because love without boundaries breeds contempt. She sees your tolerance not as strength, but as weakness. And the moment she senses she can disrespect you and still keep you, she loses the attraction that made her stay in the first place. Let me make this brutally clear. A woman cannot love a man she doesn't respect. She can enjoy you, use you, lean on you, even miss you. But love, real, grounded, rooted love, that demands respect. And if she disrespects you by lying, cheating, manipulating, gaslighting, devaluing, or simply discarding you, and you let her back in, you're not teaching her how much you love her. You're teaching her how little you value yourself. That's not loyalty. That's self-betrayal. That's not love. That's emotional dependency dressed up in hope. And she can feel it. She can feel that you're not staying because of standards, but because of scarcity. You're not in love. You're afraid. Afraid to start over. Afraid to be alone. Afraid no one else will want you, and fear makes you blind to disrespect. But it's time to see. Time to ask yourself hard questions. Would I accept this treatment from a friend? Would I tolerate this in a business partner? Would I encourage my sister to accept this from a man? No? Then why are you letting a woman walk all over your soul in the name of love? Real love requires boundaries. Real love protects dignity. Real love doesn't tolerate emotional violence. And if you're excusing her behavior because she had a rough childhood, or she's just scared of intimacy, or she needs to heal, let me tell you something. Healing is her responsibility. And if her healing requires your pain, she's not your partner. She's your burden. You want to change your life? Start with your standards. Write them down. What will you no longer tolerate? What are your non-negotiables? Then commit to never lowering them again, not even for her. Especially not for her, because the moment you make love the excuse for your suffering, you give away your power. The Stoics didn't beg people to love them. They lived by principles, not emotions. And if someone couldn't walk with them in truth and honor, they walked alone. You need to reclaim that spirit. No more making excuses for disrespect because of chemistry. No more tolerating abuse because of history. If she cannot respect you, she cannot have you. And if she has already shown you who she is, believe her, not her words, her actions, because that's where truth lives. Love doesn't excuse disrespect. It never did. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you stop bleeding for someone who never deserved you. Number 3, self-pity is poison. Self-pity is poison, not metaphorically, not poetically, but practically, psychologically, and spiritually, because the man who drowns in self-pity doesn't just stall his life. He rewires his identity around being powerless. And once that belief sets in, it infects every area of your existence like rust, spreading through steel, until all that remains is the brittle shell of a man who once had potential, but buried it under excuses, nostalgia, and emotional addiction. And the most dangerous part is that it feels justified. She left, she lied, she broke you, so you think your pain is proof of love, that your suffering makes you righteous, that the world owes you something because you gave your heart to a woman who spat on it, and instead of walking away with your head high, you kneel in your own misery, hoping the memory of her will notice, but it won't. And that's the trap. Self-pity turns pain into identity. It convinces you that sadness is depth, that crying for her validates the love you had. But it doesn't. It only validates that you abandoned your own dignity to keep a fantasy alive. And every man who marinates in self-pity becomes bitter, unattractive, weak, resentful, and paralyzed. And eventually he becomes the very thing he hates. A man who betrayed himself more than she ever could, because even though she left, he's the one who stayed in the past, playing reruns of what once was. And this paralysis leads to rot. Emotional, mental, financial, physical, sexual rot. And instead of using that pain to fuel progress, you become addicted to the feeling of being broken. Because in your mind, being broken still keeps her close. It keeps her relevant. It gives your pain a villain, a story, an identity. But here's the truth. She moved on, not because you're unlovable, but because you clung to the version of her you invented. And the longer you stay in that illusion, the more time you waste being the shadow of the man you could have been. So how do you break out of it? You take radical responsibility. You stop asking why she did what she did, and start asking why you stayed as long as you did, why you ignored red flags, why you kept pouring into someone who didn't return your investment. And when you ask those questions honestly, you realize you were never chasing her. You were chasing your own validation through her, hoping her attention would make you feel enough. And that's where the pain really comes from. Not from losing her, but from realizing how little of yourself you truly knew, how fragile your sense of worth was, how easily it crumbled the moment someone you idolized walked away. And that's your wake-up call. Self-pity ends when responsibility begins. And responsibility means taking inventory of everything in your life right now. Your habits, your health, your money, your goals, your self-talk. Because every day you sit in sorrow is a day you feed the lie that you're not in control. And that lie kills ambition, kills confidence, kills masculinity. And yes, the grief is real, the hurt is real, but the longer you grieve without action, the more it becomes a form of self-abuse disguised as healing. And men don't heal by wallowing. They heal by building, by moving, by grinding, by recreating themselves one painful step at a time, until one day they look in the mirror and no longer see the man who begged for closure, but the man who became so strong he no longer needs it. And that shift is where your power is, not in therapy talk or soft affirmations, but in choosing daily action over emotional paralysis. And that's why every morning you need to wake up with one mission: destroy the weak version of you that needs her to be okay, and rebuild the man who thrives with or without her, not for revenge, not to win the breakup, but to become the kind of man she could never break again. Because self-pity is the language of men who've forgotten their strength. But if you're listening to this, it means there's a part of you that still remembers who you really are. And I'm telling you now, the door to the new you is open, but you can't walk through it while carrying the corpse of your old story. So put it down, bury it, and start digging into the grind. Because healing doesn't come from waiting. It comes from work. And every day you work on yourself is another shovel of dirt over the coffin of your self-pity. Number 4. Rejection is redirection. Rejection is redirection, but most men can't see it because they're too busy treating rejection as a reflection of their worth, rather than what it actually is. A brutal, unfiltered message from life itself, telling you that the path you were walking, the woman you were worshipping, the identity you were building your future around was never meant to last, never meant to support the next level of your evolution. And the only reason it hurts is because your ego got attached to the illusion of permanence, to the comfort of predictability, to the hope that this one person, this one relationship, this one future was somehow your golden ticket to peace. But real peace, lasting peace, doesn't come from someone else choosing you. It comes from you choosing your path, even when every door slams in your face. And that's why rejection is a gift in disguise, because it forces you to confront the fact that you were depending on her for something you were supposed to give yourself: purpose, security, confidence, identity, love, all of it. And the moment she walked away, it felt like your whole world collapsed. Not because she was your world, but because you never built one without her in it. And that's the fatal mistake too many men make. They build a life around a woman instead of building a life a woman can be part of. And when she leaves, the entire structure collapses, exposing the weak foundation underneath. And that collapse is painful, humiliating, devastating. But it's also your blueprint, because once you see the cracks, you can fix them. Once you feel the emptiness, you can fill it. Once you know how it feels to be discarded, disrespected, replaced, you have a fire that no comfort could ever give you. And that fire is what transforms you from a man who reacts to life to a man who designs it. A man who stops chasing and starts creating, who stops asking for permission and starts setting standards. And the most ironic part is this: the very rejection you think is breaking you is the same rejection that, if you embrace it fully, will remake you into a version of yourself that no one can ignore, that no woman can easily leave, that no opportunity can deny, because you're no longer waiting for things to work out. You're working yourself out, and that's what redirection really is. A shift in power, a recalibration of your focus, a divine slap in the face from life saying wrong way. And you can either ignore it and spiral into bitterness, or you can accept it and step into the next level of your story. And that next level requires detachment, not just from her, but from the whole mindset that made you think she was your answer. Because she wasn't. She was your lesson. And now that the lesson is done, you're free, not just free to move on, but free to evolve, to rebuild, to rewrite the script she never believed in. And that's the power of rejection. It doesn't end your journey. It upgrades your destination. And the faster you stop begging for validation from the person who closed the door, the sooner you'll find the one that opens to a life so far beyond what you imagined that you'll look back and thank her for leaving. Thank her for lying. Thank her for choosing someone else, because that pain pushed you to become a man you never would have found if everything went your way. And that's why redirection is the real reward, the unseen blessing, the shift from dependence to dominance, not over others, but over yourself, over your habits, over your emotions, over your time. And once you own those things, rejection no longer stings. It excites you, it challenges you, it sharpens you, because you know that every time something or someone walks away, life is whispering, something better is waiting, but only if you stop chasing what left and start creating what's next. Number 5. Self-respect over sentiment. Self-respect over sentiment is a principle that most men only understand after they've been shattered, used, and emotionally bled dry by a woman who wore the mask of love while slowly chipping away at their dignity. And what makes it worse is that they confuse their pain for depth, their nostalgia for meaning, and their loyalty for strength, when in truth, they are stuck in a cycle of emotional dependency, holding on to a fantasy instead of facing reality, addicted to the sentimental high of who she once was or who they hoped she would become. And every day they replay the good times, the inside jokes, the weekend getaways, the late-night calls, the sex, the vulnerability, the first "I love you," thinking that those moments are proof that this relationship was rare and worth saving. But what they're really doing is using sentiment as a drug to escape the reality that their self-respect was the price they paid to keep something that no longer honored them. And the moment you allow memories to override boundaries, you give up the very thing that defines a man: your standard, your core, your ability to say, "This is who I am, and this is what I will not tolerate." And when that disappears, you become a shell, a man who's still breathing but spiritually dead, still texting her but dead inside, still hoping she comes back, but knowing deep down she won't. At least not for the reasons you want, because if she does return, it won't be for love. It'll be for comfort, for control, for safety. And you'll take her back thinking it's a second chance, but really it's just another test. One designed to expose whether you've actually grown or whether you're still the same man she left. And most men fail that test because they let sentiment override logic. They romanticize pain. They believe that loyalty means enduring betrayal, and they convince themselves that being the bigger person means staying through humiliation. But let's call it what it is. It's cowardice, fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of facing the emptiness that comes when you disconnect from something you once built your identity around. But that fear is the wall standing between who you are and who you're meant to be. And until you knock it down, you'll keep crawling back, apologizing for things you didn't do, tolerating things that chip away at your peace. And worst of all, you'll lose respect, not just from her, but from yourself, from the man in the mirror, from the voice in your head that whispers late at night, "You know this isn't love." And that voice won't go away. It will haunt you every time she disrespects you, every time she ghosts you, every time she posts thirst traps online while telling you she needs space. And every time you let it slide, you're not just losing her respect, you're burying your own. And the more you bury it, the harder it becomes to dig it back up. So what's the solution? You choose self-respect, like it's oxygen, like it's non-negotiable, like it's the gatekeeper to every relationship you allow into your life. And that starts with cutting emotional ties, not when it's easy, but when it's hardest, when everything inside you screams to hold on. That's when you let go. Not because you don't care, but because you care about yourself more. Because you understand that your peace, your vision, your growth matters more than keeping someone who doesn't match your path. And when you do that, when you make peace with walking away from what you love in order to protect who you are, you step into a power that no woman can give or take away. Because now your identity isn't built on being chosen. It's built on choosing yourself. And from that place, everything changes. How you walk, how you talk, how you move through the world. Because now you're not chasing approval. You're attracting alignment. You're not hoping to be seen. You're seeing yourself, and the women who once took you for granted now have to watch you from a distance as you evolve into someone they can no longer access. Not because you became cold or bitter, but because you finally chose standards over sentiment, growth over comfort, and the man you were always meant to be over the man she conditioned you to become. And that shift, that inner shift, is irreversible. Because once a man tastes the clarity that comes from choosing self-respect, no amount of sex, nostalgia, or emotional bait will ever pull him back. And that's the power of detachment, not from emotions, but from illusions. Because love without respect isn't love. It's control, it's chaos, it's captivity. And you're not here to be a captive. You're here to be a leader, and leaders don't beg. They build, they walk, they rise, and they never, ever compromise their self-respect again, no matter how good the memories felt, no matter how strong the chemistry was, no matter how much it hurts to let go, because they know that pain is temporary, but self-betrayal lasts forever. And when you finally see that clearly, sentiment loses its grip. And you begin to live, not for her, not for the past, but for the man staring back at you in the mirror who finally remembers his worth. Number 6, letting go is power. Letting go is power, not just a moment of courage or a phase of healing, but a foundational shift in your identity that separates men who live in reaction from men who move with direction. And the tragedy is that most never discover this power because they're trapped in the emotional feedback loop of hope, nostalgia, and guilt, where letting go feels like betrayal, like weakness, like giving up. But in reality, it's the exact opposite. Letting go is the clearest proof that you've outgrown the version of yourself that tolerated disrespect, begged for love, and confused suffering for commitment. And this isn't about pretending you didn't care, or numbing yourself with distractions, or pretending she didn't mean anything. No, it's about facing the raw truth that holding on is killing you slowly, that clinging to what was is stealing what could be, that every second you spend obsessing over her is a second stolen from your future, your potential, your legacy, and that legacy begins the moment you walk away. Not out of anger, but out of clarity. Not because she pushed you away, but because you pulled yourself back. Not because you're heartless, but because you've grown tired of loving someone who uses your heart as a safety net for her indecision. And the second you stop waiting for closure, for the apology that never comes, for the text that never gets sent, that's when you taste freedom. And that freedom is addicting. Because once you realize how much peace there is in letting go, how much clarity there is in emotional distance, how much time and energy you gain back when your days aren't consumed with wondering who she's talking to or why she's cold again, you start building, you start moving, you start creating a reality so full and purpose-driven that her absence becomes irrelevant. Not because you hated her, but because you finally remembered you never needed her to begin with. And that realization is nuclear, because it detonates every false belief you ever had about love, about what makes you valuable, about what you thought a relationship would give you. And you start seeing that the pedestal you put her on was made of your own insecurity. And letting go smashes that pedestal and replaces it with a throne. Not for her, for you. A throne built on self-control, emotional discipline, vision, clarity, and most importantly, boundaries that no amount of chemistry or shared history can override again. Because now you see love not as something you earn, but something you offer. Not as something that completes you, but something that complements you. And from that lens, you begin to attract women who respect you, who admire your direction, who don't play games or test your worth. Not because you chased them, but because you became the man who no longer chases, and that man is dangerous in the best way, because he no longer fears rejection, he no longer needs validation, and he no longer negotiates his value based on someone else's opinion. And this is what letting go gives you. Not just distance from her, but access to the version of you who doesn't flinch when things fall apart, who doesn't lose sleep over silence, who doesn't shrink in the presence of disrespect. And once you become that man, you walk differently, you think differently, and women can feel it. The ones who used to take you for granted now sense they've lost access. The ones who ghosted you now lurk your stories. The ones who thought you'd always be available now face the silence they used to weaponize against you. And it's not about revenge. It's about evolution. It's about finally realizing that letting go isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of the chapter where you stop living for her approval and start living for your mission. And that mission starts with you building yourself brick by brick into a fortress of identity so strong that no breakup, no ghosting, no disrespect can knock it down again. Because the man who lets go owns himself, and the man who owns himself owns his life. If you've ever sacrificed your peace to keep someone who disrespected you, if you've stayed silent just to avoid another argument, if you've begged for the bare minimum in the name of love, then you already know the cost of not having a strategy. That's why the Stoic relationship blueprint was made. Not to win her back, but to bring you back. Back to your power. Back to your clarity. Back to the man you were before the confusion, before the heartbreak. This isn't just advice. It's your weapon against years of emotional manipulation. And once it's yours forever. Click the link in the comments, grab it now, and start rebuilding on your terms. If you're ready, comment, "I'm done betraying myself right now." Like the video, subscribe, and help another man avoid the regret you've had to carry. Because silence alone won't save you. But truth will, and this is the truth they don't want you to hear.